Well, the debate over the use of public funds is exactly why we brought in our next guest. Mark Hyman is director of the Shirley Povich Center for Sports Journalism at the University of Maryland. He led the production of Creating Camden Yards. It's an oral history of how Baltimore built a ballpark that changed how America thinks about stadium deals. Professor Hyman, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Lissette.
What was it that made it so revolutionary, the negotiating for Camden Yards, and what are some of the lessons that we can learn from that and apply today?
Well, it's the story of the creation of a ballpark, but it's more than that. Camden Yards really changed the way we think about ballpark architecture, where ballparks should be located. Of course, going way back to Fenway Park and Wrigley Field and those iconic ballparks, they're all built in the city. But there was a period of 30 or more years when most ballparks were built in the suburbs, and they were architecturally, they were not very inspiring. They were concrete donuts and they were multi-purpose, so you were playing football and baseball there. Oriole Park was retro in a way. It was progressive, but also retro in the sense that it's baseball only, and it's in downtown Baltimore. And the ballpark is very quirky because it had to be shoehorned into a piece of property in the city. That made it very unusual.
Just like in our community, there's talk when we look at possible financing, the public funds. There's conversations that the public may be looking at $1 billion investment. During the Camden Yards conversations, I know that a beer tax was researched and another different tax, but they decided on creating a brand new revenue source. That was the lottery.
A sports lottery. We had not had, we're talking about scratch-off tickets that people would buy at a convenience store, a drugstore, or something like that. We'd never had one in Maryland until the ballpark financing debate began. The problem was that the Maryland legislature was very hesitant to approve public funding for a ballpark. That, I'm sure, is similar to the story in Florida. There's a lot of pushback. I mean, legislators whose districts were far away from Baltimore, they're like, why would we approve? Why would we support expenditure of public funds for a ballpark that's really not going to have a positive effect on our constituents? And there were other legislators who just were reluctant to support. They didn't want to pay for a rich team owner's ballpark. So there were lots of reasons.
And we certainly hear some of the same sentiments now in the year 2026. Your students went out and talked to a number of people. You have the benefit of 30 plus years of Camden Yards being there in the community, part of the culture, the finance, the economic engine. Did they find that most people thought it was a good investment?
Well, at the time, it was very much a mixed bag. There were even Orioles fans, some of them were very attached emotionally to the old ballpark, and they didn't really see the need for a new ballpark. But now, 35 years later, I think everyone embraces Camden Yards. It's really a point of public pride in Baltimore.
And my final question to you is, as we look at the different statistics that our leaders are looking at, there is the taxes and the public funds, and then you also have studies that indicate the possible economic impact to the region. The Drew Park neighborhood, where this ballpark would be built if it's approved, would generate $97 million in property tax revenue. That's one of the studies. Another $75 billion in direct and indirect economic impact over 30 years. Those are some of the projections. So when you look at this, what advice do you have for us in Tampa Bay? Should leaders be weighing one more heavily than the other, the projections of future gain or the cost to taxpayers now?
It's a great question. For me, the answer is to wrestle with the question, what does the presence of a Major League Baseball team mean to your community? forget about the dollars in and of course you have to consider that, but what does having the Rays in the Tampa St. Pete area mean to you? If that's important, if you think that improves the quality of life in your community, then I think you're willing to make that expenditure and find the resources to make it happen. And I think that's what we decided in Baltimore, that maybe personally I'm not going to benefit from the presence of a ballpark, but it increases and improves the quality of life here.
Thank you so much for your time. And again, congratulations on that beautiful docuseries, Creating Camden Yards. Professor Mark Hyman of the Povich Center for Sports Journalism at the University of Maryland.
Thank you.